Welcome back to Crypto World, your first next door brick and mortar crypto store, ATM, and community. I'm here with Brendan Laiben, and I am super excited to talk with you about, well, a pretty relevant topic here, which is, the game theory and mining. Now with Ethereum moving over to being proof of stake from proof of work, it's going to be really interesting to kind of see what does that mean for the community and where do we go from here?
Absolutely. There's already been a lot of projects out there that have moved to proof of stake, lots of layer twos, but I think Ethereum moving from proof of work over to proof of stake is one of the first projects to actually do so in such like a massive manner.
Yeah. Well, so to kind of back up just a little bit before we do, I would love for people to get a little bit of awareness about you, kind of how you came into this and also why you're here talking about this topic now. So where did your journey begin?
Sure. Well, I actually got into Bitcoin in around 2011. At the time, my friend was mining it on his computer, so you could still do GPU mining. And he told me, well, hey, I just got a brand new GPU by running my computer all day. I was like, oh, this is a really neat thing. So let me get in on that. And then in 2014, I was in college, and some of my roommates, they started selling pre-built mining rigs. And so they were sending them out to their customers, and their customers were having a little bit of trouble getting them set up. And they said, why don't you just run these things for us? So they got their own mining hosting business going there. This was out of Rolla at the time in Missouri. And then it built up a little bit more until eventually they grew out of that warehouse space and said, hey, we need to get a new location. Let's find some place that's got cheaper electricity, get a little bit cooler air. So they moved that up to Denver, Colorado. And I joined them my background is a mechanical and aerospace engineer. So I was working with them on electrical distribution, heat flow, cooling and stuff like that. And they ended up becoming one of the largest resellers of mining equipment here in the United States. And a lot of the original Ant miners I remember were coming in. And this was before they even had anything like S1 or S2. This was the Ant miner.
Yeah.
So that was my first entry into the actual mining business. Before then, I knew kind of oh, this is generally how it works, but I didn't actually know the protocols and stuff. And in working with those people, I got to really understand what drives them, what makes people get into crypto, what are they really looking for out of this. So I went back, finished up my degree at college, started working for Boeing for a little bit, but then Ethereum launched. And I had a bit of an inroad on Ethereum because one of the guys I've been working with was also a network developer for the Ethereum Foundation. So he got me into Ethereum really early. I said, okay, this is a really cool next step. This is a great evolution in the technology. And so I got deep into teaching myself how to do development work, taught myself the basics of web design, getting application development going. JavaScript is great for this. I would recommend to anyone who's learning how to program on their own, go to JavaScript because it does everything. It's not the best programming language out there, I'll admit that, but it does do everything. And so I realized that though there was a real lack of people that were taking advantage of this. Bitcoin had been out at this point for 8 years. Ethereum had all of this potential behind it, and no one was really taking advantage of it. So being kind of more or less one of the experts in the region, I ended up doing a consulting business. And so that grew and grew and grew. And so that's where I am today, is now I do a little bit of engineering consulting, but also over the years, I've realized that there's protocols and stuff that there's just various patterns that are always being done. You always need to have some sort of they call them canary nodes. So the thing that, before you go out and send everything to the internet, you don't want to expose your miners to the internet. So you put a canary node out there. So if someone attacks it, it goes down. And like a canary in the coal mine, if it goes down, you're under attack, but the rest of it is safe. So patterns like that have emerged, and they're always being performed. So I started up my company called Notaros to kind of take advantage of the fact that these are emergent patterns that everyone needs to use and then sell those solutions specifically. We've also developed our own layer 1 protocol to address some of the compliance and regulatory issues. So there's a big push for decentralization. There's a big push for a lot of the, kind of anti-state sort of operations. But on the flip side, there's still governments and stuff. They still want to take advantage of this technology. They still want to understand how can they benefit from blockchain, and they want to do all of that without cryptocurrency. So we provide them solutions to do that. We provide solutions for businesses and teams that are just getting started, as well as we've worked with enterprises and just have learned a whole bunch of different ways that you can apply this technology beyond the scope of pure cryptocurrency into supply chain, into machine learning, data science, stuff like that. So it's been quite the experience, quite the ride coming up and seeing just how the industry has evolved from just this little niche community on a forum up to like where it is now in a global industry.
Yeah, it is wild too how fast it's happened. Like like what you just described. By the way, it's wild how far you've gone in that short a period of time. But it's like 2011, 2022. It's like 11 years. It's like
right. People think we went from airplanes to rockets in 50 years, but like it's like 4 times as fast to do anything in the crypto industry. People will say like it's like living in dog years. One year in crypto is actually, or 7 years in crypto is like just 1 year in the calendar year.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, everything happens really fast. There's a lot of financial impetus behind it, and also we kind of get to learn from the internet. So when the internet was first being created, we had things like ARPANET. We had like very distinct networks, and then they all kind of came together in the end to form the internet. And that accelerated businesses in ways that people have never even imagined before. Before you had to go into a brick and mortar store, or you had to like call up someone on a catalog, be like, hey, can you send this thing to me? And now I can just go to my phone and connect immediately and get that done. So that's the same sort of revolution I think that we're looking at here with blockchain, is things that we don't even think are possible right now are just right around the corner.
Yeah. So to take one small more detour, because I couldn't help it there, you said things that we don't even think are possible around the corner. What do you think are some around the corner things that most people aren't thinking about as possible that are just right there waiting to happen?
Well, I always like to imagine, what does the like end game look like? What is it, when everything's really connected, and we call it the hyper connected economy, what does that actually do? And I like to say, well, whenever you're hungry, you have to go and like find food. You have to go like, okay, what do I want now? Well, if you do this often enough, your phone eventually figures out, oh, he's going to be hungry at noon. So like, what does he want? He wants like a burger or a taco or a pizza. Well, if your phone could then get an options contract on on one of those things, and then you say to your phone, hey, like I'm in mood for a burger, you can get a burger for a discounted price. You execute the options contract there, sell the other ones to the people around you, and then a drone can come pick that burger up from wherever it is, deliver it straight to you, and then that drone can be like operated by someone who's not even like McDonald's or something. It could just be like an Uber drone, basically. Yeah. And all of these things can be done in a peer-to-peer fashion. And so you can just basically get to the point where you say, I'm hungry. Your phone knows, boom, got a burger, reach out your hand. The drone's already on its way, drops the burger into your hand, like you're good to go. You don't have to really think about things anymore, and things just drop into your lap like that. And of course, this expands to like consumer goods and manufacturing processes, just all the way down the line. The more blockchain is really about predicting the future. By understanding the past, we can predict the future. And so the more things that are put on chain, the more predictive we'll be able to be about the economy, and things will just kind of just naturally happen. You won't even have to make decisions anymore, because there'll be a natural outcome of the things that you've already been doing in the past.
Yeah. And I feel like we could go down that line of thinking for probably days, just coming up with all these beautiful ideas.
And I have.
yeah, I feel you there. Circling back around, because it's such a relevant topic right now, you'd mentioned being aware of what drives the behavior of the miners, because you're around them. So I guess let's talk about that. What drives their behavior? Like what gets somebody into mining? What gets somebody into scaling at mining? And like, why are they there?
Well, one of the things I like to say about miners, and this is a good thing, is that everyone's cutthroat. Right? Everyone wants to like get the most money out of their investment that they possibly can, and you expect this. You expect that the miners will do the things that are most profitable for them. That's how like the whole system is kind of set up. And so whenever someone's getting into mining for the first time, they're typically looking for a return on their investment, or they're looking for a way to get fresh coins. So that's kind of another angle that's evolved recently. Is a lot of the Bitcoin, I think 99% of all wallet addresses in the world are known. Just because there's so many reporting requirements, and then there's traceability on the chain, of course, transparency into where it's going. So about 99% of all the wallet addresses are known, but the freshly minted Bitcoin, that's never been tracked. It can go into a fresh wallet. And so people that don't want to have this like aspect of, my money might have come from a terrorist or something, I don't know where it came from necessarily. They mine for those fresh Bitcoin, so they can use them to kind of get around that aspect of it, and avoid the criminality part.
Interesting.
So that's one part. And then there's the profitability, of course, of being able to just say like, oh, I've got this thing that just basically mines and prints money almost. And then so those two factors right there are pretty much like what drives most people, as they want some way of getting into this, and they don't want to have to go through like a typical exchange process. At a higher level, a lot of people are driven by like, the concept of decentralization is really cool. People get into it for that. But those are more philosophical issues. If it wasn't decentralized and you still offered this, people would be like, yes, money printing machine. Yes, I like that.
Oh, yeah.
But it's only because it's decentralized that we have the capability to do so. So those are the high level things that get people in. And then there's always personal stuff, of course. Like you've got a buddy that does it, so you want to do it and be part of it, and have the opportunity to get in on maybe something that's could take off and go to the moon. But of course, that goes back to the profit incentive. So it almost always boils down to that profit incentive. And like I said, that's really what you want out of a miner. You don't want them doing things that aren't profitable, because then you can't kind of expect what they're going to do in the future. You say like, oh, I'm going to make you more money. And therefore, like, yes, I want that.
So with that said, I mean, which of course makes sense. Side note before kind of moving forward, I think community has started to play more and more of an aspect to why people get involved with mining. Not at scale, of course. I mean, you don't want to be part of a community so much you spend $40 million on like a mining, like setup. But at the same time, I feel like, especially being here at Crypto World, it is interesting to see the amount of people that are hobbyists, kind of like they look at mining the way that they do brewing beer. It's kind of something fun to do. And it's like, kind of get out of the house and interact with it and learn the technology. And I think that that's really cool to see. But that said, that as far as like the terahash of processing power there, I'm sure that they're just like currently a subset. With Ethereum moving over to proof of stake, what do you think that means overall for the entire industry, for these miners? Like, what are you thinking if you're them? What are you doing? Where are you going?
Well, there's Ethereum Classic, right? And that's the Ethereum that is the most true to the official like Ethereum ethos, which is code is law, everything's decentralized, the community decides like what's going on, and it's in the software itself. Ethereum as it is today is kind of has diverged from that because of the DAO hack, which we can get into later on. It's a very complex subject that not a lot of people remember. That was kind of early in, I think, 2017 about 2017 timeframe that happened. But I think that what will happen now is that people will say, okay, well, we've got all these GPU miners and Ethereum Classics sitting here, and they're still on proof of work. Let's just move all of our mining over to Ethereum Classic and boost that chain up, because it's the same thing. It's the exact same protocols. Everything is just working the exact same way, and they have this opportunity to make a little bit more money, recoup their investment on it. But the big downside of the proof of stake moving over is that you actually lose security on this, because whenever you're mining with proof of work, you have to develop the manufacturing capability to produce the chips. You actually have to distribute the chips. You have to sell them. You have to put them into miners. There's a whole process in the real world that has to go on in order for you to get enough hash rate to even think about attacking the Bitcoin network. Whereas if you just have like a few $1 billion, you could take over a proof of stake network. You could potentially start, really manipulating things that are going on in there. A few $1 billion might not attack Ethereum very well, but certainly we know companies exist today that are trillions of dollars in net worth. And there are billionaires out there who could very easily drop, the whole market cap, basically, on an altcoin. So proof of stake itself has this capacity to very quickly, without any signal in the real world, just be taken over by a malicious actor. And so I think that's like the real downside to where Ethereum's been moving. Is before you had to wait for NVIDIA or AMD to whoever to like produce the GPUs to like get the mining capability out there. And if you saw that, hey, there's no GPUs on the market, where are they? They're all going to this one guy. Well, he's probably going to be the one that's attacking the network. So like let's reorganize in a way that will prevent that from happening. And we don't get that transparency with proof of stake. We don't get to see, where is this all going? It ends up being like the people who have the most money, people who are already in control of the financial systems. Those are the people who are going to end up in control of these proof of stake networks. And I think that's the real dichotomy that we see here. It's no longer one CPU, one vote. It's more like $1, one vote. And we've seen how that works in society these days.
I think it's funny you say that, because I actually think of, and not direct but parallel, but similar, is proof of stake is kind of the system that we have now.
Mm-hmm.
It's like if those with the money make the rules, set the laws, kind of determine how things go. I mean, so it seems like moving back over to that system creates its own set of problems. But I don't want to oversimplify, because I think that there's, you don't want to connect those two things together too much, but at the same time, it seems pretty similar.
Right.
And so that said, what do you think that this means what do you think this means overall for miners, like kind of what's happening with Ethereum? Do you feel like this is kind of a ripple effect to other platforms to go over to proof of stake? Do you think that this is kind of the movement? What do you think that does to the mining industry?
Yeah, I think Bitcoin's here to stay. There's already proof of stake style Bitcoin offshoots and stuff, but like I said, they don't benefit from the proof of work security aspect that we've got. And so as things move to proof of stake, I think if something big happens, if we see like a big failure, people will say, okay, proof of stake isn't secure. But I don't think that we'll actually see that, because it's still like a marginal possibility, but it's on the same order. It's like 5 sigma instead of 6 sigma, basically. And so I think that we'll see a lot of people move to proof of stake. I think we'll see a lot of people trying to figure out, well, how do we make this democratic? How do we keep people who are like, super uber wealthy people from taking over from the small fry, the people who are actually like trying to be, get it decentralized. If everyone is like devoted to one person or like a small group of people, that's not decentralization.
Yeah.
Right? And then so you lose some of the like, really core philosophy of what makes blockchain and DLT in general like powerful. So I think we have like a couple of years now before people like have really tested the waters and seen like, okay, this worked for a major network, it's worked for these other networks, it seems to be secure, let's continue moving on. And then as it becomes more and more powerful, more and more adopted, they'll get more stake on it, and it could eventually surpass like where we see the current stock markets at. But in the same way, a lot of people don't know this, the derivatives market is about 100 times larger than the stock market, to the tunes of like, potentially quadrillions of dollars in the future, because you just don't know. And there's all these, it's basically they're printing money in that way. But that's a very chaotic system, right? So if one derivative starts to go down, people dump that, goes down to the other derivatives, they dump that. And I think that's something we might see in the proof of stake world, where if we get to a certain level where people are confident that, hey, there's $4 trillion or something in Ethereum. Well, we need $4 more trillion in order to take it over with proof of stake. But suddenly someone has a derivatives contract, and the price of gold drops and the price of silver drops, and the whole economy goes into a recession. Suddenly you're at 800,000 or $800 million on the market cap for Ethereum. You've just lost 75% of your security on that. So that would be a huge attack vector, and that's where people would consolidate and say like, okay, I'm now going to take most of the market and it's going to come into me. And if that were to happen, I think we would see kickback from the community, and they would find other ways to make it democratic. They would find new protocols to say, okay, proof of stakes, we'll cap it. We'll cap your voting power at a certain amount, and you have to like distribute it. And then you have to have like proof of identity, show that you're actually a real person, so we can separate whose wallets from, are all mixed together versus the people who are actually just real individuals. And so I think that we'll see probably something along those lines, probably papers and stuff, white papers coming out soon that say proof of stakes not exactly what we think it is, and that's not really as secure as we think it is, or it's not accomplishing the goals that we want. And then they'll move to more, I think proof of work will be kind of like the fallback option on that, because we can see proof of work has a very like concrete security model. It's very hard to get the hashes to come out exactly correct all the time. You can do the math behind it, but it's very robust actually compared to the rest of the security mechanisms. So it's a great fallback option. And I think if that were to happen, we would see all of these miners suddenly come back online and start mining proof of work, probably on like ETH 3.0 when we get there. But I think for the short time, we're going to see miners moving to altcoins. They're going to move to some of these different chains. There's already ETH proof of work. I got to deposit in my Kraken account for that already. That was great to see. And then we'll keep continuing to evolve. Everyone's always trying new things. There's always the next thing around the corner. And so, like I said, the next 2 years will really be like does this actually work? Can we prove that it works? And I think the answer is probably yes. And we'll see uses for proof of work that are, more geared towards like data mining, like farming, like giant supercomputers. This was one of the projects that I got into early was Golem, and that's what they do. They do decentralized supercomputing. So if you're a researcher at a university and you don't have like access to a supercomputer on site, you can actually pay the Golem network to run your computations for you, and it's a lot cheaper than buying a supercomputer and operating it on your own. But you get that same computational power out of it. So I think the GPU miners and the CPU miners and all those types of people that aren't really able to take advantage of the Ethereum network as it is today, they'll move to platforms like that where they can actually get, do realistic work that has real outcomes in the real world.
So where do you hope that this goes? Like if you could choose, like you could kind of move the pieces on the chessboard, and where would you hope that kind of all of this turns out in the end?
As far as mining goes, I think that everyone needs a miner in their house. I think that every single person needs to have a full node, at least, for their region, so that they can understand, they can interact with the local economy. I think that's where, we'll see that when you go into a shop, they've got their own miners, and they'll have one that, kind of controls their own finances. And as if you expand that out to all the houses, all the cars, planes, like basically anywhere you can put a miner, I think that anything that supports that end goal is like the real like final destination of where we want to be in the DLT space. We want everyone to be a part of it. We want everyone to like have the same ability to contribute and secure the network. And so that's where I would like it to get, that's where I really like it to go is to the point where even on your phone you can do your mining to a degree and just give everyone that access. Because what we haven't seen yet is the banking the unbanked that was promised to us.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff going on in Africa right now, and various other impoverished areas where we're currently trying to get them the ability to run with crypto, but they're not able to interact with like the real world market in the same way, because the real world market still uses dollars. So getting everyone to be able to participate in that market by getting everyone miners, by getting everyone on like the mesh of all the networks that will exist, I think that's where I'd really like to see it go.
What do you think is holding that back?
Well, it's just got to be the powers that be, not to put like a little buzzword out there, but there's people out there who they don't want this to succeed. They don't want their business to be like made obsolete because suddenly people can do their own banking, people can do their own financial accounting, people can do their own insurance even. There's all sorts of stuff that is just obsolete because it requires that you have a trusted party in the middle. And when you don't have to have a trusted party, those go away. But right now, those middlemen, those are the ones that control like how everything flows around. So that's why we see people like JP Morgan and lots of the other large banks. They weren't about Bitcoin. They're like, no, this will never take off. This is like, nothing will ever come of this because it's not the way that the world works. And yet today we see them investing heavily in Bitcoin. We see them investing heavily in these coins because they know, they see the writing on the wall, but they don't want to lose that control over the system. So they fight against it.
Yeah, it's actually funny you say that because earlier this morning, Bitcoin Ben was in and he made a call out straight to Jamie Dimon. And it's like, I was like, all right, that's pretty intense. I mean, but to that point, though, you kind of make a hard stance that it's like you're against it, like heavily against it. And then all of a sudden, like a very short period of time later, like it's found that you've been kind of stockpiling this stuff. And it's like, one could argue that you adapted and you learned, and then therefore you stepped into space. The other argument could be that maybe you were buying your time so that way you could kind of control the way for which you bought in or kind of how much of it was working to your favor. It's tough to say which it is, maybe some combination of both, but in that way, we find ourselves in a very interesting place. What do you think happens in the next few months? Because clearly we're given the economy in a current downturn with crypto, but kind of downturn with everything, right? And people, the spare cash that they have that's now non-existent, or they're worried about whether or not they're going to be able to use it for food and whatnot, as they should be. But because of that, a lot less has been flowing into crypto and people have been getting scared and pulling out, which is understandable. Same thing happened with stocks. What do you think between the market and Ethereum moving over to proof of stake? What do you think that means for the next few months if you had to guess?
Well, I think that we'll see a lot of PC gamers suddenly love the really low GPU prices that they're going to get. Right?
Yeah.
Because you have to operate these GPUs on electricity, it costs you money to run them. It costs you money to run any sort of Bitcoin miner too. So as those returns go down, people are going to start selling equipment that's no longer profitable to them. That includes a lot of the miners that got the GPUs that got snatched up a few years ago, and like the consistent like purchasing that they've been doing. So I also think that because of this, you'll see companies like AMD and Nvidia, they'll start losing some stock value as well, because they're no longer going to have guaranteed returns from their manufacturing. And so as I think that's going to be like the biggest thing we see is just GPU prices are going to be suddenly reasonable again.
Yeah.
But long term, I think the like in terms of like how the market itself is going to react, it's really hard to say. You know, Ethereum didn't functionally change. They say that gas prices are going to be the same. We're still going to have the same scalability problems. You know, layer twos are going to function the exact same way they've always been functioning. So it's kind of like we're in this weird transition phase where people are like, yeah, like, you know, we're going to definitely change what's going on, but I don't know if it's going to like negatively impact the market, positively impact the market. I do know that we're still in the very early adoption phase of this technology. There's still 80% of people have never even like touched a Bitcoin wallet or even like any sort of crypto. Very few people understand the technology behind it or like why this thing works the way that it does. And a lot of people have misconceptions about it. Like there's been, you know, a lot of FUD and various other types of misinformation that's been just sent out by like Bank of America and JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley, those types of people, because they don't want it to succeed. They want to toss it out there like, hey, like this isn't an investment vehicle. It's going to make you returns. And to be fair, like that's not really the purpose of Bitcoin. The purpose of Bitcoin is to be a transactional mechanism. So like move value around and prove that like you know got your IOU over here and gave it to someone else. So the value of that IOU may change, it may increase, it may decrease, but you're still going to get something out of it at the end. But really, so in the next few months, really depends on like how the stock market goes, because that's where we're going to see the biggest movements happen. You can almost, it used to be divorced from the stock market to a degree, but I remember in like 2018, you could just watch the stock market change, and if crypto started dumping, you could wait 3 days and the stock market would start dumping as well, because that's the investors taking their money out. They're trying to get cash assets because they see what's coming ahead, and crypto just operates on a much faster time scale. So if the economy starts to improve and we start to see recovery, we'll see a lot more investment. We'll see a lot more liquidity, cash flow going into not only just stocks, but also crypto. But then also you have to play, okay, well, we've got interest rates rising. So free money is no longer free anymore. We can't get loans. We can't do huge investments. And so it's going to be less volatile, I think. And if any of the conflicts around the world really start to flare up in a way, I think that's probably going to be the thing that causes the most upset in the market, because that causes fear. People want to get into like real solid securities at that point, your precious metals and stuff like that, where they can go, and if the dollar crashes or if any of like the other markets crash, they still have something physical. But then after that, if the market were to crash, that's when crypto will take off. That's whenever it will finally become like everyone will need this. Everyone will need like something that isn't really controlled by the world governments. They can't like just turn off the faucet basically anymore. Everyone will have access to it, and they'll move into crypto and they'll start using it for their day-to-day transactions, and that will just drive the prices way up. So I think we're kind of it's a little push and shove sort of deal on the markets. A little bit of a back and forth on it, but I don't like to be predictive. So I got into the Ethereum pre-sale, and I had several thousand Ether, and I'm not a millionaire today because I suck at trading. I suck at predicting where the market's going to go. I get blindsided all the time. That's I remember watching the Bitcoin and Ethereum rise up, and I was remember thinking like Ether is like $20, like $23, yeah. And then the next day the DAO hack got announced, and it was like it just divorced itself from Bitcoin, and like suddenly all the gains were gone. Yeah. I probably should have like taken my profits whenever I could, but if wait 4 more years and it's up at $4,000 at that point. So It's always going to be a long-term play. All of these cryptos where people are consistently adopting it, they're consistently adding value to the ecosystem, building applications on top of it. That's what drives the price forward, because that's the real value of cryptocurrency, is it lets you do something on the ledger. It lets you get something on the blockchain. And if you want to participate in the markets that are on the blockchain, you're going to need it. And that's what's going to drive people to purchase it, which drives the price up.
Yeah. I can't help but to think that you could probably post how many ether you bought and when you sold it and put it on like Wall Street Bets or something like that, and kind of get a little bit of a following behind that. Sounds like you lost a fair amount. You said thousands?
I started with thousands. And so at the time when it was like a few pennies, I was just day trading. And when you're like day trading, it's like, oh, well, like, yeah, sure, I lost 40 ether, but that's like a dollar. Right? So like it wasn't a huge loss. I was just playing around with it. And then after a while, I said, okay, well, I really want to like start my consulting business. So I sold out a bunch of the ether, thinking like, oh, I'll just like buy it back. And just hit it at all the wrong times, basically. So yeah, lost corn for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that sounds, even now, I know that's kind of dipped a bit, but at the same time, you're looking at it, still be pretty penny. But hey, I feel like those kinds of experiences are actually the ones that are going to be the most relevant for us who've been around, who didn't have $50 million by the time it was all said and done, or 12 or whatever it might have been. And so because you can actually help people build off of those platforms and kind of recognize that, because there's a lot of loss there. And I think that that's something that has to be noted in these conversations, both about mining and buying, is I think a lot of people, the hobbyists and people even who maybe got investments, they get into mining thinking they're going to make money. They're just going to print it, and then they don't. And I think that they probably contribute to a certain percentage of the naysayers, because they were the ones burned the hardest. And so every single time you have a down cycle, there's this trail of tears, if you will, on the way down. So do you feel like that's going to have any effect on mining in the future, mining regulations or just cryptocurrency regulations?
Yeah, absolutely. Because anytime investors get hit hard by something, they go and they want to regulate it. They want to make sure like it doesn't happen again. And those are the people who can really drive regulation and like legislation in the real world, is the people who have like a lot of the connections with the markets. So, but the thing to remember is that in any trade, someone is making a profit, someone's taking a loss relative to like the actual market. It's a coincidence of ones. People, they both want to make that trade. They both come to agree that like this is a thing that we both want. But whoever, if you look at the market, if you take a 4-year look at it, everything's 1,000%. Like whatever you're doing, it's just going to go up if you can hold it long enough. But if you have to if you're trading it around in that time, you're still looking at like, well, I made a loss here because I didn't hold it for 2 years. And so if we see big institutional investment in crypto, and then there's a crypto crash, we'll see the regulators come out and say like, oh, it's all securities and it's all unregulated. You can't do any of this stuff. Like they're going to clamp down on it. But if it starts to make them money, if it starts to be like consistent returns, then they're going to open it up and they're going to say like, yes, we want more of this because we want to make more money. We want this to be a thing that everyone can get into. So I think that'll be the thing that really like catapults it into the mainstream, is when they finally say like, yep, this is not just like an investment vehicle for people who are really technically savvy. It's going to be in your 401k. It's going to be in your Roth IRA. It's going to be basically in all of these things. And when you see it right now, because it's one of the highly volatile assets. So you should typically do like a 90-10 spread of like stable versus volatile stocks and stuff. Crypto now falls in that bucket of like highly volatile, but like potentially 100x, 1000x over the course of 10 years. And if you're like 20 years old right now, and you're looking like, when I retire at the age of 80, because that's where we're going to be, you've got 60 years of gains. And we've seen every single thing that survives more than a decade is just insanely more valuable than it was when it started out. And that makes sense too, because like the network infrastructure is developed in the same way that you wouldn't have valued Amazon 20 years ago the way you value Amazon now. They were a bookstore, and now they run like all the computers in the world almost. So it's completely different business for them right now. But their evolution kind of reflects the same evolution that blockchain technology does.
Yeah, and so coming into the last couple minutes here, you actually hit on what was going to be my last question for you, was from where you sit. what can we do? What can we do as Crypto World? What can we do as Brendan and Corey? What can we do as someone listening right now to really bring forth more adoption? And for that matter, I mean, because we came in the conversation talking about game theory of mining, to really empower people, governments to kind of adopt this kind of thing, to be pro-crypto, pro-mining, as opposed to the alternative.
Well, it's kind of falling back on what we were saying earlier. Like, I've lost a lot of opportunity. So whenever the markets are down, the people who are really deep into crypto, they go back and they look at the fundamentals, they look at the technology, and they get really deep into the technology, and they help explain it. They understand it better. They get more applications out there. I think that's really what the crypto ecosystem needs. Is we just need more people who can understand the technology, who can build real applications on it. Not like, we like to say like the NFT craze is like, some wild weird thing that's out there. And it seems silly right now, but so did the internet when it first started out. Yeah. So people who can really take these ideas, these like very basic ideas, and then build on them to create applications that regular people will use. Like if you put cryptocurrency into TikTok, like poof, everyone will suddenly take it off. So like that would be a big deal. But just educating people about what it actually means to be in this technology, not just the investments, and not just like it might moon. Like, this is technology that's here to stay. This is the new internet. This is how people will suddenly be interacting with each other in 10 years. I think that you won't necessarily know that you're using a blockchain, but everyone will be using some sort of a blockchain technology. And so the faster that we build those applications, the faster we get engineers, the faster we get graphic designers, the faster we get everyone on board to get this technology out to the real world. That's the things that we can do the most. And that's education, it's engineering, it's all of the above. And we just have to be cognizant of the fact that when we say these highly technical things, people don't always take them the right way. So sometimes it takes 3 or 4 times to get the point across, and we don't want to have to get terribly complicated with it, because again, most people will never ever see the technology. You don't know how the quartz crystals in your phone work. You don't necessarily need to know what protocol your blockchain is using or how any of that stuff works. You just need to know that whenever I press this button, a drone will come and drop a burger in my hand. Right?
I mean, that does sound delightful. So I want to say thank you for coming on in, Brendan. It was absolutely spectacular. For those of you tuning in, you're going to want to make sure to come back at 12 Central. We're going to have Brian Estes, which is going to talk about Bitcoin allocation for investors. And of course, too, if you are passionate about brick and mortar, next door crypto stores that allow people to walk in with Bitcoin and walk out, or walk in with cash and walk out with Bitcoin, then come to our WeFunder. You can actually invest in us. Or if you don't want to invest and you just want to support, you can come onto the Patreon. A little bit goes a long way, kind of helps build out these communities and events like this. And of course, make sure to subscribe and share.